Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome into another amazing Todd Begg knives video. Today we're going to be talking about the Glimps in general, and that's why I've brought out pretty much the majority of my Begg collection, which are Glimps knives now. And you guys know that going way back in my channel, some of the first videos 5 years ago, one of my first true loves was the Todd Begg Bodega. And then I had gotten into the Glimps 2.0 way back then, and I've had pretty much every variation, I don't want to say variation, but every new evolution, except for the one that came immediately after that. So I jumped from the 2.0 to the 5.5 to the 6 to the 7. Now we're basically in the 8th iteration of the Glimps, and what you're seeing here are many different flavors of the newer generation of Glimpses, going back to the 5.5 that you see there in the black and gold. So today is going to be a classy episode. I'm wearing presentation gloves. Why? Because one of the focal points of this video is this gorgeous, sexy little number right here, which is the new Zirconium inlaid variation. And it's the only one that's here on the table that is not from my personal collection. That's actually going to be going back to Mark Begg as soon as I get done with this. My newest iteration is right here in the Star Strike, which matches my Star Strike Bugatti that you've seen me do the video on in the past. So without any further ado, I'm going to go straight over to the one that's speaking to me the most, and that's going to be the Zirconium. And then we're going to wrap up the end of the video. For those of you that go, holy shit, these are really expensive knives, what can us mere mortals afford, as some people have said in the past comments, and that's where these two guys are going to come in. I'm just going to tell you right away, the two in my hands, which are absolutely amazing, are $300. So definitely stay tuned for the end of the video to see an in-depth look at those. And we're going to take a look at these. I just threw these in here because they're also Glimpses. This was a friction folder that they no longer make, and this was one of 20 fixed blade Glimpses that they made, which I absolutely treasure. I carry the shit out of that knife. I absolutely fucking love that knife. Okay, so let's get into the Glimpses. Now, you guys have seen the video on this one, hopefully, my black and gold. I've had this now for well over a year. Just enjoy the hell out of it. It's still a knife that I love to carry and use. It's just fantastic. I love the finishes. I love everything done to it. All the embellishments that have been done, they did a great job. However, many things have changed when you get into these newer variations. This is my Star Strike here, and this is the Zirconium inlay here. Now first let's talk about pricing. If you go back, and I don't want to go back too far because it doesn't make any sense because we're going back years and years, but going back to the 5.5, this one was basically as decked out as you could possibly get. This one and then the gold and blue that I had with the satin blade were about as decked out as you could get, and that maxed out at about $1,500 in Bowler and 690 steel. Now, however, the prices have gone up, but you're going to see some differences here, and I'll show you some side-by-side comparisons to justify that. In the Zirconium, let's start here with the Star Strike is $1950. And the Zirconium is $22.50. Now Zirconium it's a pain in the ass to work with on a lot of levels, but the basic thing is the finishing of it. Number one, it's a very dangerous material to work with. For those of you that don't know, it is extremely flammable. When you're grinding and cutting on any of these materials, you know, titanium can catch fire, steel can catch fire, but it takes quite a bit to do so. Zirconium, very easy. It's very highly combustible, and the sparks last a lot longer when they're flying off the belt, flying off the machine into the pile. They burn for a lot longer and at a hotter temperature. So yeah, they won't even sell it to everybody, by the way. I don't know if you know this, but like if you're for some reason, a small-time knife maker working in your garage, not in your garage, but in your basement, somewhere within your home, you can't even, I can't say you can't buy it, but they restrict the sale of zirconium. They don't want you to buy it so you don't burn your fucking house down. So there's some little bit of danger element there going on there, but the finishing of it is a little bit more difficult than everything else. When you first see zirconium in its raw form, it really doesn't look any different than titanium. To get this black finish, this is an oxidized layer over atop the material. And once it's been heated to oxidize in that manner, it makes the surface really, really hard. It's actually harder to scratch than titanium, but I am wearing the gloves here, not to be cutesy and funny, but because I don't want to junk it up with fingerprints while I'm showing it to you on camera. Once, once it's not on camera anymore, it doesn't really matter, but I want you to see the pure beauty of zirconium. Now, I've shown you a lot of knives with zirconium, and I gotta tell you, this is some of the finest finishing I've ever seen, especially when we're talking about a knife that's not a 100% full custom. You know, these are still mid-tech knives, and that's what's so incredible about the quality that you're getting out of these. Look at the new back spacers. Isn't that weird how your entire finger will fit into the gloves, but what's up with the thumb? I don't have abnormally short thumbs. What's going on there? It's a little floppy. Maybe it's a reservoir tip. Ugh. Anyway, so you take a look at some of the new embellishments like the laser engraving here. You'll see that followed through on the spine of the blade. And it really adds another layer. Whoops, look at that. The slippery gloves, and I almost dropped the damn thing. Sorry about that, guys. It adds a whole new layer to what they're doing. You'll notice also now that they're doing these beautiful pivot collars on both sides. And this one happens to have a zirconium clip as well. That adds a lot of value above having a titanium clip. You see the jeweling that they're doing here inside of the relief for the lock bar. That was not done in the past. So an extra bit of embellishment there. Again, that engraving that didn't exist here. Here we have the jeweled ice pattern, not the engraving. And it's up to you which one you prefer. I love the jeweled ice look, but I also like the engraving, so it's really going to be what you like the best out of those two things. Now the blade steels are a little bit different. This is Bowler N690. It's a fantastic steel, and one of the main reasons that the Begg Knives has used N690 is the fact that it can take a number of different finishes pretty easily, from satin to full mirror polishes, whatever you want to do. When we get into CTS 204P, however, it will take nice high luster finishes, but it makes you work a lot harder to get to them. And as you see, they did a magnificent job, and this is a true hand-rubbed satin. This is not done on a machine. You can see the striations in there, just beautifully, beautifully done. Another thing that I love is they've actually polished the flute. So what we really have to look at here is the labor. So they've taken this blade after it's been ground, and they have gone and mirror polished the entire blade, which takes a hell of a lot of work. So I don't know every single grit they've gone through, but figure they've gone through at least up to 2,000 grit into micron finishes. Probably not a half micron. That's what Todd Begg does for his full customs. But I would say very, very, very close to that. Then what they've done is they've done the hand-rubbed satin on the flats of the blade and the hand-rubbed satin on the bevels. That allows just that flute to remain as a mirror. So they've actually had to back down the finish to give you all the satin finishes and have that mirrored flute. They didn't need to do that. That could have been all the same finish, and it would have been absolutely, totally fine. They could have done this. They could have sprayed this thing in black DLC, had the flute black, which is fairly traditional for the knives, and then done a satin finish. But no, they went all the way up to a friggin' mirror and then backed down everything else to give you this beautiful contrast. The frame, quite a bit different there as well, is all done and a beautiful satin finish as well. Again, this is something that we did not see on previous versions of the Glimpse. Just gorgeous. Got that, still have that raised tractor or gear pattern, whatever you want to call it, for the back spacer to give you a little bit more traction. There's the newly added engraving. That black ball right there at the end of the clip denotes that your IKBS and your detent are both going to be ceramic instead of steel. If they were steel, then that would be a silver steel ball instead of a black ceramic ball. There again is that beautiful jeweling. Very, very nicely done. Polished flute again in the lock bar. And like I said, out of all the ones sitting here, this is pretty much the highlight. This is the one that really, the Glimpse model in general speaks to me. Most of Todd's knives have always spoken to me. And if you listen carefully, what's that, girl? What's that? Oh, you want me to finger you? Okay. Never say no to that. Yeah, that detent is just hard enough that a gloved hand slides right off of it, but it is so solid. This is, by the way, out of the five bodegas that I've owned and the 5 glimpses that I've owned, this has the best detent I've ever felt outside of one of Todd Begg's customs. It is really, really finely tuned. It is just spectacular. And yeah, these gloves are driving me insane. So I'm going to lay this here and let you just kind of soak that in, and we'll bring out the Star Strike. Now this one is my personal knife. And just like I told you in the video on the Star Strike Begatti, the Star Strike material is very much like a lightning strike carbon fiber, but they're exposing much more of the copper wire, which allows it to be, and pardon the pun, much more striking. It really, really is. And then they have this layer, this clear coat layer over it that allows them to polish it to a mirror polish. And no matter how you touch it, you don't have little pricklies sticking in your finger. And that's one of the things about lightning strike carbon fiber that, you know, makers don't enjoy having to work around and collectors don't enjoy having to feel, are the ends of the copper prickling through the material, and it can snag and dig into your fingers and your clothing and everything else, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. Well, with this wonderful layer over it protecting it, not only does it look much prettier, but it's also serving that utilitarian function. Again, we go back and talk about that newly added pivot collar to these models. Looks fantastic. There's the engraving right there on the back spacer. Once again here on the spine. Everything is just gorgeous. This one has the jeweled ice pattern on the clip, as well as the pivot collars. And mine also has the same incredible hand rub satin. Now the only difference between this Glimpse and the one that you're able to buy right now off of begknives.com, mine happens to be CTS 204P. Mark was kind enough to make mine in that steel, but all the rest are going to be in the Bowler N690. And the only real differences to you, because you're not the one that's doing the finishing work on the steel, as far as for the consumer, the only difference is the 204P is going to be a little bit better in the corrosion resistance. And I'm not talking by a lot. I mean, when you look at their data charts and everything else, and a lot of times you can't believe the data charts because that's more or less marketing. It's supplied by the manufacturer. It's a marginal difference. I do believe, though, that the edge holding capability is much better on the 204P than it is on the N690. I haven't done any independent testing to tell you that for certain, but going off of conversations I've had with folks in the past about this particular steel, that would be the case. So yeah, that's really the only difference. But when you get yours, it will look identical to this. And I got to tell you, it is It is truly, really, honestly, a magnificent knife. Now, I want to get that out of the way, and since that's my knife, I don't care if I get my fingerprints on it. Let's get rid of these pompous-ass gloves and get back down to the comparisons. Ah, I feel so free. All right, so as far as the overall build of the knife, the dimensions are the same except for, I believe, the thickness. The new ones are a little bit thicker because of the inlays. So you're still looking at 8.875 inches overall length, a 3.75, so 3 3/4 inch blade, weighs about 6 ounces, again uses the ceramic IKBS, ceramic detent, and the blade thickness is 150 thou thick, and that will be the same for both knives. And I tell you, the all titanium versions, the 5.5, is a teeny tiny, and I mean almost imperceptible amount slimmer. It's just a little tiny bit slimmer. So these are just a tiny little bit thicker, feel great in the hand. Again, when you're not wearing gloves, they don't slip out of your hand. This is why the jimping is here, by the way, on the back spacer. It's for your thumb and a reverse handhold should you be using it in that manner. And again, the action on these things is just fantastic. But yes, I don't want you to be mistaken. You're paying a premium in order to get these. $1,950, $2,250, it's a hell of a lot of money. But realize this, they only make a few. These, they're making 20. The Zirc, they're making 20. And that's it. Now realize when you go back to the originals, I don't even want to say the originals, you just go back a couple of years. They still didn't make many more. And look, try and find one now. It's so friggin' hard. The 2.0 that I had, which was G10 with the Amboina wood inlays, I paid, at that time, it was used by a couple of years. It was brand new, but I mean, it had been released for a couple of years. I want to say I paid somewhere around $1,200 for it. I sold it for somewhere around $1,500. I don't know if it's changed hands since then, but I guarantee it's a hell of a lot closer to $2,000. So as these disappear off the market, as they stop making them, the prices have always, in my opinion, in my view I should say, from what my research has shown me, have always gone up. Same goes with the bodega. You know, the original G10 titanium bodegas that were $850, try to touch one now for under $1,300, $1,400. A carbon fiber, you're not going to touch for under $1,600, $1,700. So they've all appreciated very, very well. They've become good investments for those that have chosen to own them. So when somebody says, oh man, I could never spend, you know, basically this is $2,000 on a knife that's not a full-blown custom, well, why are you making that comparison? If you're looking at it purely on an investment standard, these seem to be appreciating just as well as most of the well-known customs out there. The build quality is of a custom knife. The only reason they're not calling it a custom, and I want to be clear about this, is the fact that Todd himself, the man whose name is on the blade, Todd himself is not making this knife. That's why it's not called a custom. However, the crew that works at Begg Knives, that is religiously overseen, they're all custom knife makers. They're all doing a high degree, a high level of work that they have been trained specifically to do. So you are buying a knife that is crafted in the same way that a custom knife is. The only reason it can't be called a custom is because that man right there did not actually build the knife. And it's always been that way. My bodega, Big Red, the knife that you guys know I love almost as much as life itself, was not made by Todd Begg. It was his design. He trained the crew, and the crew has gone through training to make these knives in a custom fashion. So that's really what you're paying for here. If this was a true mid-tech, as defined by so many others, where the work has been farmed out, all this work has been done elsewhere, off premises, they may not have even been designed in the same building, whatever, you know, then you're spending $500, $600, $700, $800. But you're buying a knife built like a custom knife with high-end materials, all these other things, and all done by hand, with over 40 hours of handwork in every single knife. So it's really hard to call it a mid-tech. Plus, how many mid-techs do you know that have a hand-rubbed satin blade? And so well executed. All right, I promised you I would get to these other two little gems. This is the Steelcraft series of the new Glimpse. Now, there are significant differences. As I talked to you about, you might recognize this. This looks very similar to the prototype. I did a video on Todd's custom prototype for these knives. The main difference is this is not going to be a frame lock. Instead, it's a liner lock. So you have the full inlay on both sides of the knife instead of just having it around the pivot going midway down. So it actually encompasses the entire knife. By the way, fantastic action. The detents, everything is phenomenal, and these are $300. I almost didn't want to include these into my library of videos because I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Outside of having a handcrafted knife of high-end materials and very, very, very fine finishing, this is every bit as good of a knife. For a knife, again, a knife that you're going to carry and you're going to use, and you don't care about certain embellishments, and it doesn't have to be particularly pretty. These are friggin' amazing. People ask me all the time, I don't spend a lot of money on knives. If I was only going to spend $200-300, which would be the most I could ever spend, what knife would it be? It's always very challenging because I don't deal with a lot of production knives, for one, so I don't know a lot of what's out there. But it's very challenging for me to say with a clear conscience, yes, spend that much money, and that's a lot of money to spend on a production knife, on X knife, and you're going to do really, really, really well. I can tell you right now, whether you go for the non-fluted blade or you go for the fluted blade and one of the many color choices, this will be the best $300 you've ever spent. You're getting the feel, the design, and the overall character of the Glimpse that is anywhere from, go back a generation, $1,500 to the current generation, closer to $2,000 and more for $300. Why is that possible? Because these, again, the Steelcraft series, which is denoted by the square logo versus, come on now, light, there we go, the round logo, the square logo that says TB Steelcraft. These are made in China. The original Steelcraft, when you go back to the Quaken, that was done with Riata knives. These are done with Wee knives, and you've seen I've done videos on Wee knives in the past. They nailed this, man. There's a couple little things. These are both from, and they're actually marked somewhere, yeah, right there, from the first run of 100 knives, which are basically more or less prototypes. These were only available if you went to the Blade Show. I unfortunately didn't go, but that was the only place that you could buy them, and the dealers picked them up and you can get them from them. There are a couple little things that Mark went back and told these are fantastic. I just want you to change a couple little things. And just, I mean, they're tiny, 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 like the logo. This shows you how minuscule changes can sometimes be. He wanted the logo to be a little bit more black so it could be more easily seen. So, sometimes just the teeniest, tiniest little changes, but it's got to be just right, and it has to be just perfect if that name is going to be anywhere on these knives. So if you're looking for an utterly fantastic EDC version of a Glimpse, run. Don't walk, run to your computer. Go to any of the websites listed at begknives.com, you know, Blade HQ, Knives Shipped for Free, Knife Center, all these great, great, great dealers, and get one of the Steelcraft Glimpse. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. So you've got the liner lock, which really, when you get down to it, is a tab lock because it is inset into the frame. It's not a full liner. See, there's no liner down here. The clip comes around I'm sorry, the clip attaches here, but you'll see the back spacer comes around here, and then it's nothing but G10. So this is all G10. Mark said they probably weren't going to do the black and blue, but I'll be honest with you, I really fell in love with the look, so I requested the black and blue. And a lot of you guys tend to like what you see in my videos, so you might end up seeing black and blue in their run. They may not make as many as the rest. This is Mark's favorite right here, the tan with the carbon fiber. I'm still waiting. I have one more coming to me. When it's done, it'll be black G10 and black carbon fiber, which I think is another amazing, amazing look. But what you've got here is a nice lightweight knife for that same big full-size 3 3/4 inch blade, the works. You choose the materials. It'll be G10 and G10 or G10 and carbon fiber, and then you choose flute or no flute for the blade, and you're getting something pretty damn fantastic. And by the way, look at their high belt satin finish that they accomplished on the bevels. No, it's not a horizontal hand rub satin, but look how fantastic that looks. They did a great job. All the way around, fantastic, fantastic knives. So, one thing I didn't mention, S35VN will be the steel. Fantastic steel. So there you have it, guys. This is my little glimpse video. I really wanted to do just a video on the Zirc, and then I started looking and going, man, I love my Star Strike, and I haven't had a chance to talk about it. And it's a great companion to my Bugatti. I mean, it really is, except for the fact that it doesn't have the mirror polished blade. It's the same look, and how cool is it to have a match set? So I had to make sure that I did a video on that. I just didn't want to have a whole bunch of different glimpse videos, and I felt it was really, really important for everybody to see the most affordable variation. For 300 bucks, and I think it's 350 when you get into the carbon fiber. You can't beat it. I mean, if you're looking at spending that amount of money, if you've only spent $50 on a knife for 100 bucks, then of course that's still a lot of money. I'm not downplaying that. People always say, "Oh, you're such a prick because you call a $1,000 knife affordable." I put it in perspective in comparison to other knives of its quality. I'm not comparing it to a Walmart knife, so I'm not downplaying the fact that, you know, 300 bucks is still a lot of money for a pocket knife. However, if you're already looking at spending that much and you want to get something really great, you'd be hard-pressed to find something better, seriously. So there you go, guys. That is my look at the current glimpses, and pretty much as they continue to evolve, there's always going to be one that's going to strike my fancy, and I'll probably, you know, be uploading another glimpse video in a year or two when they redesign it and do it again. So we'll see how that goes. But for right now, that's it for me. Thank you guys for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next video.